Dragons or dinosaurs? What does the Bible really say? What if we have misclassified one single thing, and that mistake shifted an entire era? What if dragons never went extinct but were only renamed? What if the Bible is not speaking in symbols about monsters, but about real animals and describes them in detail? And what if today we use two words, dragon and dinosaur, for the same phenomenon, each coming from a completely different worldview, and those creatures even lived into the Middle Ages? Stay with me, because later we get to a detail in Job that is almost never read fully, and it changes everything. So listen closely now, so you don't make the same mistake others did. Let's start with Behemoth, the creature that doesn't fit. In the book of Job, chapter 40, God himself describes a being named Behemoth. Not Job, not a prophet, not a king or a storyteller. No. God speaks directly and describes what he created at the same time as humanity. That alone gives the text a new weight. He says it eats grass like an ox. See now the behemoth which I made along with you. See now, his strength is in his loins and his power in the muscles of his belly. He stretches his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are knit together. His bones are like tubes of bronze, his limbs like bars of iron. He is the first of the ways of God. Only his maker can approach him with the sword. The mountains yield food for him, and all the beasts of the field play there. He lies under lotus trees, in the shelter of reeds and marsh. Can anyone catch him when he watches, or pierce his nose with a snare? The crucial sentence we must focus on is, his tail sways like a cedar. A cedar is not a twig. It is a massive tree. Common explanations say hippopotamus. Others say elephant. But neither hippo nor elephant has a cedar-like tail. So why choose that comparison at all? If we instead think of a sauropod, a Brontosaurus for example, an animal with a massive, long, powerful tail, the description becomes suddenly concrete. Here's the decisive point. Job is traditionally considered one of the oldest books in the Bible. If this description is not meant as a metaphor, then this creature existed in human times. And that's where the problem starts. Because if Behemoth was real, then our whole chronology shifts. How could the Bible know about dinosaurs, if only today we have methods to analyze fossils and reconstruct what these animals looked like? How could such precise knowledge already exist back then that it matches our modern descriptions? Next, we'll look at what happens if we read the description of Leviathan just as literally. Leviathan, myth or biological memory? Job 41 describes Leviathan. An armored creature, uncontrollable, feared. And it doesn't stop at metaphors. The text speaks of smoke coming from its nostrils, sparks that fly from its mouth. Many say pure symbolism. But the description is conspicuously technical, conspicuously concrete. Why? And why do dragon-like creatures appear not only in the Bible, but in nearly every ancient culture? China, Europe, Mesopotamia, Scandinavia. Everywhere there are accounts of large, reptile-like beings. Are these pure fantasies? Or are they cultural memories of real encounters? If Leviathan is not a symbol but an animal, then we're not discussing theology, we're discussing zoology. But before we draw that conclusion, we must understand something else. In the next section comes a detail that decides whether all this is mere speculation or a real-time problem. And at the end of the video, we'll look at the actual Bible wording, as it may really have been intended. The time question: when did they really live? The standard model says, dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago. Humans have existed for a few 100,000 years. So there is no obvious overlap. But this timescale is based on radiometric dating. And every dating method rests on assumptions. Constant decay rates, Closed systems, known starting values. Now comes the decisive question. What happens to dating assumptions if there was a global catastrophe? Massive geological upheavals. Sudden sediment shifts. Remember this, because we'll return to it later. In some dinosaur bones, organic structures have been found. Soft tissue, collagen remnants, vascular structures. If these findings are correct, we face a real-time discrepancy. But before we talk about that, we must ask another uncomfortable question. What if dinosaurs were not excluded from the Ark? The Ark and kinds. Genesis says animals were saved according to their kind. The word kind does not necessarily correspond to every modern species. It describes basic types. If dinosaurs were part of creation, representatives of their basic kinds would have been on the Ark. Many dinosaurs hatched small. Eggs require little space. Young animals grow later to full size. Logistically, that would have been possible. But here's the interesting part. After a global flood, the climate would have changed drastically. Instability, food scarcity, shortened lifespans. What if dinosaurs existed after the flood, but under new conditions shrank or slowly died out? And what if that very phase explains medieval dragon reports? In the next section, we examine the organic finds more closely and why they are so explosive in this debate. Soft tissue and the time problem. In recent decades, structures that look like blood vessels have been found in some dinosaur fossils. Soft tissue. If these finds are interpreted correctly, a hard question arises. How can organic material survive millions of years? The common explanation is special preservation processes, mineralization, chemical stabilization. But the mere existence of these finds shows that time models are open to discussion. And now recall earlier. If radiometric assumptions are sensitive to starting conditions, and if global catastrophes occurred, then the time window becomes at least debatable. Not necessarily disproved, but debatable. And if the time question is open, the coexistence question opens as well. And this is where worldview matters. Worldviews and terms. What happens if a creature in the Middle Ages was called a dragon, and in the 19th century, dinosaur? The term dinosaur was coined by Richard Owen in 1842. Before that, the word didn't exist. Large fossils were interpreted as dragon remains. Only with modern paleontology did terminology change. This is not proof of a conspiracy, but proof that terms shape worldviews. Dragons belong in fairy tales. Dinosaurs belong in museums. A change in words changes the category. And that's the real tension. If dragons were real animals, the ancient world wasn't naive. If dinosaurs coexisted with humans, the separation is artificial. And if that possibility is at least discussable, it affects not only fossils. It affects history. Here the official reading ends. And here the uncomfortable question begins. What if that text never spoke of a hippo or crocodile? What if it describes something we today know by a completely different name? That's exactly what we'll examine now, step by step, and render the complete text in an alternative reading. The Brachiosaurus, aka Behemoth, the giant from Job. Look upon the Brachiosaurus, which God made along with you. He eats grass like an ox, but his size towers above any herd. Strength dwells in his loins, muscles run through his massive body like taut ropes under stony hide. His tail rises up like a mighty tree trunk, heavy and powerful, ready to fell any attacker. His bones are like bronze, his skeleton like iron girders. He is one of the first great works of the earth, an ancient masterpiece of creation. He stands calm between river courses, among dense plants, where other animals seek shelter. Even when the current swells, he remains unshaken. No spear pierces his armored skin. No hunter dares approach him head-on. His skin rises like a rampart. He moves slowly but with the dignity of a king. Where he walks, the ground trembles. Where he stands, everything else yields. Who could catch him? Who would put a rope through his mouth? He was made without fear, and the plains belong to him. If you take this text literally, rather than minimize it, a different picture emerges. A gigantic plant eater. Not a predator, not a mere symbol, a land colossus. His tail like a cedar, not a short stump. Rather a tree trunk-sized tail, tubes of bronze, hollow massive bones. Load-bearing structures of a huge body. Some ask, does this sound more like a hippo, or like an ancient giant saurian? And that's where the tension starts. If the first text was meant on a larger scale, what does that mean for the second? Now to the second specimen. The dragon, aka Leviathan, lord of sky and deep. Can you pierce the dragon's hide with harpoons, or strike his massive head with spears? Put your hand upon him, and you will never forget that battle. For whoever challenges the dragon dares to call forth fire itself. No hope remains for the one who thinks he can tame him. The very sight of him takes the breath from the brave. Who dares to rouse him? Who can withstand him? Who can open his armored skin? Who enters the maw where heat and smoke dwell? His mouth is a gate of terror, and his teeth stand like swords in a circle. His back is like a fortress of scales, locked like iron seals. Scale upon scale, so closely joined that no breeze finds its way between them. Unbreakable, unshakable. When the dragon snorts, it flashes like lightning at dawn. His eyes glow like burning coals. From his throat blazes fire. Sparks fly as from a smith's forge. Smoke rises from his nostrils like from a burning furnace. His breath kindles flame, a fire issues from his mouth. In his neck dwells strength, and dread marches before him. His skin is hard as tempered steel, his heart hard as rock. He knows no fear. When the dragon rises, even the mighty tremble. Swords break against him like straw. Spears bounce off. Arrows are to him like chaff in the wind. Copper and iron are to him like rotten wood. He laughs at the roaring of weapons. His body plows the earth, and when he moves through waters, the depths boil like a seething kettle. Behind him the sea foams, as though bearing white hair. On the earth there is none like him. Made without fear. A king over all that is proud. A lord over fire and deep. A creature that emits smoke. A being whose breath acts like fire. An armored reptile with dense overlapping scales. Traditional explanations say, poetic exaggeration, metaphor. Yet ancient cultures worldwide depict a similar creature. A fire-breathing reptile, a dragon. Is that proof? Not necessarily, but it's possible. It's worth asking. Why do different cultures use similar imagery? Why does a text describe a creature so anatomically if it was only meant symbolically? And now the crucial point, if both chapters are only symbolic, why are they so anatomically specific? And if they are anatomically specific, why do we reduce them to familiar animals? Maybe Behemoth and Leviathan are poetic images. Maybe they are real animals. Maybe dragons are myths. Maybe dinosaurs are misclassified. The crucial question is not whether you choose a side now. The crucial question is, why was this discussion never pursued seriously? And when it is pursued, why is it so quickly closed?